Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to our online classroom. I'm Rebecca Seja, Instructional Specialist with Richmond Public Schools. We have been going through the chapter book, Sound, Lights, in the Theater. We are going to be doing Chapter 4 today. Now, if you have not already viewed lesson or chapters 1, 2, and 3, those lessons, you're going to want to scoot off of here, go be a part of those lessons, because there's a lot of information in there that we will need for today. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about what we're going to do today. Let me make this a little bit smaller and get rid of some of this visual noise. All right, so we are going to look at our table of contents and see where we're going to find Chapter 4 in our book today. We're going to go over our augmentative communication device and the vocabulary that we're going to need. We are also going to do our text and feature walk to help us get our mindset on what we're going to be doing. We will look at our KWL chart, which we've done in the past, to see what we already know, what do we want to know, and then at the end, what we have already learned. Then we will be comparing some information from noise levels and how that's measured, and sound waves and how that's measured with light waves. And those are from our previous chapters. And then, of course, we will be looking at our assessment. We will do that prior to reading. And who can tell me why we're going to do that prior to reading? You can talk to a family member. Remember why? Excellent. You're absolutely correct. It's so that, again, it helps us focus on what we're going to be doing today and the information, so that when it is time for us to take our assessment, we are prepared and ready to go. All right, let's go ahead. Augmentative communication device, if you don't already have it with you, go ahead and just put pause. Go and get your device, because we want to make sure that you are able to be a part of our discussion and familiar with the vocabulary. If you do not have an augmented device, but you use a picture system, you can simply just use this to help you interact with the lesson as well. All right. Everybody all back? Excellent. Here we go. So let's look at what our vocabulary is going to be today. We're going to make this just a little bit bigger so that we can see. So one thing is very important are the colors. Today we're going to be talking about light, and how light actually has many colors within it to create a color. And so we're going to have red, green, and white, orange, yellow, and blue, indigo, and violet. Now, who can tell me what indigo is? Indigo and violet, those are kind of unique colors. If you have a large box of crayons, maybe a 36 or a 64 count box of crayons, you'll probably find these colors in there. So indigo is just a deeper blue that's kind of moving toward the purple color. And then violet is a more vibrant purple, means that it's a brighter color. So we're going to need those together. Always when we're talking about sound, we were always using vibrate. Now we will use vibrate just a bit in this particular lesson. And let's see, we're going to need light, energy, and waves, light waves, and sound waves. Now, just as we talked about in our earlier chapters, we discussed wavelength. So that has something to do with light as well. So we're going to need wavelength and sun. And then, just as we went over all of these different colors, we are also going to be talking about, well, what's the easiest way to remember those? And it's going to be the rainbow. All right, we're all ready to go. Let's go ahead and take a look. We have Chapter 4. And let's just do our text feature walk. But right before we do that, let's look at what do we already know from our previous chapters. Now, we know that sound begins as a vibration. We know that sound waves move closer together and far apart. You remember that slinky picture, right? We know that tall sound waves were loud and the shorter sound waves were quieter. And there was constantly this straight line in all of the waves that we saw. And that straight line represented what? What did the straight line represent? Quiet, silence. That's absolutely correct. And then sound is measured in decibels. So that's the increments. That's how we measure how loud or how quiet something is. Just like when we measure how long something is, it's in inches or meters or centimeters or miles. We measure sound in decibels, and that there are some sounds that are too loud and not safe for our ears. And then there's those that are very quiet that we can't hear at all. So let's go back to our walk. And let's get focused. So here we just have different color lights the students are going to be putting on. It's interesting that they're not all one color. There's 3. Here we have a light bulb. Now right below it are the different colors that we talked about that we would be discussing today. But notice the waves. Are the waves all the same? We'll see how important that is. Then here we have what appears to be the slinky again. Remember in our earlier chapter, they used a slinky we talked about to talk about waves, sound waves. Let's see how that relates to light. And then sound waves versus a light wave. Here we have the sun and then the waves of the many different colors. It'll be interesting to learn what that is about. And then here, just like we had in our earlier book, remember we had this in, I believe, Chapter 2, where it was telling us the different decibels of sound and what we could hear at different points. So let's see how that chart relates to sound, to light. And then we had the sound waves in our previous chapter, and let's see how that relates to our story as well. See, here is our sound or light waves in this chapter, but remember we talked about that, but it had to do with frequency. And then that brings our story to a conclusion. So let's take a quick second. We're going to reset our story, but let's look at our test questions before we start reading. Let me make it just a little bit larger. All right. So of course we're going to want to know, what is the chapter about? How do light waves move? What does the sunlight look like? What is in light? And then what is important to know about this chapter? So those are going to be things that we're going to definitely want to focus on as we're reading our passage so that we can highlight information and help us answer our questions on our test. All right, let's look at our table of contents and see what page are we going to find Chapter 4 on. Again, we got to make it just a little bit bigger so we can see this. All right, so Chapter 1 was page 1. What did we find on page 10? 2. So 1 was on 1, 2 was on 10. What page are we going to go to for Chapter 4 today? What page are we going to go to for Chapter 4? Yes, we're going to go to page 27 because Chapter 3 was on what page? Take a look. You can ask a family member to help. Yes, it was page 18. All right, so let's go to page 27 in our book, and let's go ahead and begin our story. So Ashley, right before we begin reading, let's do a quick review of our previous. We know that all of the students are where? Where are the students at? What are they getting ready to do? That's kind of 2 questions there. You can ask a family member to help. Yes, the students are getting ready to put on a play. Very good. And then, so they're putting on the play, and we're inferring that they are at where? We're inferring that they're at their school. Based on the pictures that we've seen, it appears as though they're in a school. And initially, what were we listening or what were we reading about the students doing? They were working on what? They were setting up the sound. And so as they were setting the sound up and they were beginning to sing, Miss Biss felt like they were too loud, or were they too quiet? They were too quiet. Very good. And along with that, earlier, the students had a question about how did the guitar make sound? And so as we read through chapters 1, 2, and 3, it was all about how sound was being used during their play to bring all of their efforts to life, right? So now we're going to talk about, they have all of that figured out. They've got the guitar, they have the amplifier, they have the microphones to sing into. They know that they need to be loud when they sing. And now we're going to figure out, well, how are they going to light that up? And how does sound and light, how do they compare with one another? Here we go. Remember, you can read along as we go. You can turn my sound off and just read it out loud by yourself. You can again turn my sound off and you can click here and it will read to you. If you're actually on your computer with the program your teacher has set up at home. Otherwise, let's go ahead and go on our journey together. The students must check the lights. Red turns on the lights. There are red, green, and white lights. How does light work? Light is energy. There are invisible bits of energy. They move in waves. These bits make light waves. Now, what else have we discussed that moves in waves? Think about our earlier lesson. What else did we discuss that moved in waves? Yes, it was the sound moved in waves. Now, look at the difference between the violet wave and the red wave. How do light waves move? Miss Biss and Juan hold the spring toy again. Miss Biss moves the spring toy up and down. Light waves move up and down. Now, how did the sound waves move? When Miss Biss had the slinky and she and Juan held it again, did they move the light wave? Did they move it up and down or back and forth? Back and forth. Sound waves and light waves move differently. Sound waves vibrate. Light waves do not vibrate. Sound waves and light waves both have wavelengths. They are both energy. So where else did we talk about wavelength? Remember, we talked about wavelength and we talked about how that was important. So let's go back and let's see if we can see our wavelength. Here in our earlier chapter, we talked about that from the crest of those waves, from the top of that wave to the top of that wave, that's how we're measuring the wavelength. So it looks like we are going to be doing the same with our light waves. Let's read that again. Sound waves and light waves move differently. Sound waves vibrate, light waves do not. Sound waves and light waves both have wavelengths. They are both energy. Sunlight shines down and looks white. There are colors and other light waves in light. Some light we can see and some light we cannot see. So I think this might be telling us that in that white light, there's actually many of these colors together. Let's see. There is light that we can see, and there are colors that in a rainbow of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. So here, just as we are measuring the waves, the colors of the rainbow within all of the light. Remember, here we were measuring how did we hear sound and what was the quietest at 0 being silent and going all the way up to a jet engine. So see how we can use diagrams to help us understand and organize information that's easy for us to learn from and study later. So here we have, right here at this point, we have radio. Right here at this point is a microwave, infrared, visible, and then let's make that just a little bit bigger for Mrs. Seja. Ultraviolet, X-ray, and gamma rays. That's a lot of information, isn't it? We're going to have to really go through this and learn more about this. So tomorrow's lesson, what we're going to do, we aren't going to read a new chapter tomorrow. What we're going to do is we're going to compare and contrast light waves and sound waves and what we've learned about each. And with light waves, we're going to actually do a little experiment where we're going to make our own rainbow so that we can see all the different colors in light. So here on this picture, you can see that they have the different size waves for each of the colors. Now, down at violet, it starts very tight, right? And then it begins to get wider and wider and wider, and then we get to red, and those wavelengths are much further apart. So if we look at the wavelength of red, and we go all the way down, let's blow it up so you can see it well. And we go all the way down to the wavelength of violet. You can see that they're very, very close together, just in the opposite of what red is. Now, where else did we see the difference in wavelengths from crest to crest? Where else did we see that? Yes, we saw that in sound waves. So let's take a look at those sound waves. So here it's showing us the wavelength, but look at the low frequency. Yes, the wavelengths are greater, they're larger, they're further apart. So then at the high frequency, who can remember? Who can remember the wavelength for a high frequency? Is it close together or further apart? The high frequency is closer together. And we also remember that the low frequency had a shorter, shallower wave than if we look at the high frequency where we have a taller wave and those wavelengths are close together. All right, let's go back to our story. Each color has its own wavelength. This is like notes in sound. Red has waves that are far apart, and violet has waves that are close together. The play starts in 45 minutes, and the students need to hurry. They're going to start putting the props on the stage. So now they've had all this discussion about light waves, and we've compared and we've done a little bit of contrasting of light and sound, and we'll do more about that tomorrow. So let's go ahead and let's look at our test questions for today. Are you ready? All right. What is this chapter about? What is this chapter about? So if we go back to the title of our chapter, and we're just going to take it right back to our first page, what is this chapter about? What's the key word in our title? Yes, unlike our other chapters were about sound, this one is now about light. And you remember how this works. If we get a green box, it's correct. If we get a red box, we're incorrect. It is about light. Very good. How do light waves move? How do light waves move? Well, let's go and look. Now, who can remember with the slinky? How did the light waves move? So we're on page 30, right? And how do light waves move? Miss Biss and Juan hold a spring toy again. Miss Biss moves the spring toy up and down. Light waves move up and down. Very good. So how do light waves move? Do they move in a circle? Do they vibrate? Or do they move up and down? Yes, up and down. So remember that we are always going back to our passage and we are always proving our answer. Okay, we're never guessing, we're proving our answer. What does light wave look like? Does it look like A, a rainbow, B, black, or C, white? What does sunlight look like? Let's go back. Sunlight shines down and looks white. There are colors and there are other light waves in light. Some light we can see and some we cannot. Sunlight shines down and looks white. Good. What does sunlight look like? White. What is in light? Is it colors? A, colors, B, people, or C, animals? What is in light? Well, I think our answer was on that same page. There are colors in the lights. Good. Now, what is important to know about this chapter? Of all of the information we talked about and everything that we discussed, what is really important to know? Is it important to know light only has one color? Now, is that accurate? Each color has its own wavelength. Now, is that true? So let's go back and look. Did each color have its own wavelength? And I think we have a better diagram right here, right? What is our information telling us? Our information is telling us that every color has its own, every wavelength has its own color, okay? So each color has its own, each color has its on wavelength, like its own wavelength. And then C, light comes from clouds. Did we talk anything about clouds? No, I don't think that we did. Very good. Excellent. So let's take a look at our chart real quick. And we had talked about things on different pages. We talked about why were there different colors under the light bulb on page 29. Page 30, were we able to infer that light moves based on that picture? And that was where they had the slinky. How can we compare on page 31, compare and contrast the light, sound, and waves? The light waves and sound waves. And then on pages 32 through 34, is light really made of many different colors? And then how can we know? So let's see what we learned. What we wanted to know, and this would be actually, this is where I copy and pasted a chart. What did we learn? There we go. Made a correction. Remember, anytime you make a mistake, just make the correction. It's okay. Sometimes we have to make adjustments on the fly and we forget one simple thing, and that's all right. So what did we learn? The picture is showing how light is made of bits of energy that create light. Then we learned that yes, light moves just like sound moves, except we know that light moves up and down. We do know that yes, it moves, but sound waves vibrate and move, while light waves do not vibrate and that they move up and down. We learned that some waves can be seen like colors in the rainbow, in the Prism. So in the Prism, that language wasn't in our story, but we said it just briefly when we were talking about the rainbow. And a prism is actually a way that we can see all the different colors, and it is all the different colors within the rainbow. Then colors in a rainbow or a prism are red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, which is that deeper blue kind of headed to a purple, violet, which is a brighter purple. And then each color's wave is different, beginning with red, that is far apart, and ending with violet, which are very close together. All right. Excellent. Listen, it was great spending time with you today. Um, Go ahead and take some time and review all their information. Tomorrow, when we come together, we are going to be doing a little comparing and contrasting of light waves and sound. We're going to do a little experiment. I'm going to practice on that tonight to make sure that it can pick up on camera of how we can actually make a rainbow, which allows us to see all those different colors. Meanwhile, if you have a slinky and are able to kind of just practice of how does the sound wave move, and if we take it really far apart, then we have that lower frequency, and if we have it together, we have a higher frequency, and you can see how those sound, how those wavelengths change, and then take it and turn it up and down and see how light waves move, and make a red wave and then bring it close together and make a violet wave. All right, till we come together tomorrow, please stay safe. Enjoy your day. Get out and take a walk. Practice your social distancing, but get out and just enjoy this absolutely beautiful weather. Have a good day. Bye-bye.